You alright guys, so today what we're going to do is we're going to work on one method of revision that we sometimes might use when we're preparing for a test. And this is one that I do quite a lot with all my classes in year 7 to 11, and we call it a brain dump. So what we need to do is think about, when we're preparing for a test, what can we remember without actually looking at any kind of revision resource, and then write it down maybe in a couple of minutes and then reflect on it before we move on to the next stage. So what we're going to do now really quickly is Miss Sinclair, who's filming this for us really well, is going to give me a minute and I'm going to try and write down all the things that I can remember about the Tudors that I've just been teaching in the last term. So if we pan this angle round here, what you'll see on the table, we've just put the heading Renaissance Tudors, and then I'm going to give myself a minute, and with a black pen I'm going to write down as many things that spring to my mind that I can remember that I've taught or that I've learned in the last couple of lessons. Okay, so is the timer ready, miss?
Timer is ready.
All right,
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, so I remember the first king was Henry VII. Henry Tudor was the first. And I remember that he had 2 children. He had Henry, who would go on to be Henry VIII. And he had another son, a boy called Arthur. Now I also know then from that point on that Henry went on to have 3 children. And I remember the first child he had was Mary. So I'm going to put Mary at the top because I remember that. And then he had another daughter, Elizabeth. So I'm going to put that there. I can't remember when they were born, so I'm going to leave that blank for a minute. But I remember the third child, the one that he was really happy to have, was Edward, because Edward was the son that he always wanted. I also need to think what else I remember about Henry. So I remember one really important detail is this phrase, the break with Rome springs to mind. So I'm going to put that down there, break with Rome. I remember it was in the 1530s, but I can't remember exactly when. I do remember that happened because he wanted to get a divorce. So I'm going to put that down here as well. And I also remember it's because he wanted to get a divorce from his first wife, who was called Catherine. And he'd fallen in love with someone new, but I actually can't remember her name in a minute. So I'm going to put a question mark there because I've forgotten that. Okay, where are we up to, miss?
You've got 10 seconds left.
Okay, 10 more seconds. So I'm going to put Henry VII. I'm going to go back here and I'm just going to pop War of the Roses because that has just jumped back into my mind. I'll draw a little flower, a little rose there. Oh, look at that. Lovely, lovely little rose to help me remember. Okay, cool. So what we've done there is we've taken a minute and we've just done some active revision on all the things that I can remember without having to look back through my notes or my knowledge organiser about things that might be on this test that I'm going to do. And the next part, the bit that I think is the most useful, is when I'm going to go back through this now, and with a different coloured pen, what Miss Sinclair is going to do is she's going to add details to this that will support what she's remembered by adding it in another colour to supplement and improve the level of information she needs to know.
Okay, so obviously Mr. Nowicki has done a very good brain dump, just looking at the table here, all in black with just things that he remembers from his own memory about the Renaissance period, specifically the Tudors, which you do in term 3 of year 7. A way to up this revision and make it better and more active for yourself is by using your knowledge organiser. So you should all have one of these in your exercise books, also should be on your Google Classroom if you do not have your exercise book. And obviously we say to you, this is sort of your layout of the whole term. So all information you need, you've got your timeline, you've got your lessons that you will have learnt about, and also keywords at the bottom. Okay, your assessments are largely built around your knowledge organiser. So really, really good revision tool that you should be using. So what I've done already is I've read through my knowledge organiser and I've gone through and I've highlighted different key dates, different key terms, sort of different key themes that I think are really important for the Tudor era and the Renaissance. And what I'm going to do now on this brain dump in a different colour pen, that's really important, so use a different colour pen. I'm now going to take a minute to add more specific detail to this brain dump, okay? Remember, the higher marks in your 12-mark questions come from that specific knowledge and detail or that specific evidence. So dates, names, statistics, anything you can get in is really important. So Mr. Nowicki times me 1 minute, and then I will go through and add, using my knowledge organiser to guide me, some more key information.
Okay, ready?
Yes.
Go.
So I know that Henry VIII, from my knowledge organiser, became the King of England in 1509. Henry VII was important because he was the first Tudor king. Okay, so he begins the Tudor dynasty that you look at. Break with Rome, I know, happens sort of between 1532 to 1534. Okay, looking at what I've highlighted on this knowledge organiser. Big cause of the break with Rome, okay, and a big underlying theme here is Catholic versus Protestant. Okay, so those two different Christian groups. With this, I know Catholics like decoration, okay, they like decorated churches, whereas Protestants like very plain and simple churches. So that's one difference I can identify. With this, and then the key thing with Catholic and Protestant, we're thinking Henry VIII. Okay, he initially is a Catholic, okay, until he then breaks with Rome and becomes head of the Church of England, okay, and turns England into a Protestant country. Then we've got that religious roller coaster, which I don't really know how I'll draw, but just to represent, you've got your religious roller coaster of our different monarchs. So we know Mary was a Catholic. Okay, big thing about Mary is she burned lots of Protestants. Specific detail, looking at the knowledge organiser, 284 Protestants were burnt. We then go to Elizabeth, okay, who was a Protestant, and a Protestant who followed something called the Middle Way. Okay, so she allowed Catholics to worship, even though she was a Protestant. And then we've got Edward, 100% Protestant. Okay, Mr. Nowicki said Edward was the child that Henry so desperately wanted, because he was a male heir. Okay, and if I look at my knowledge organiser, an heir, the person who will inherit something or the throne when Henry is to die. That's largely why Henry wants to cross out divorce, wants the annulment. Okay, so that's a common sort of error we sometimes see. So wants the annulment from Catherine of Aragon to marry Anne Boleyn, but that is not the only reason he wants to marry Anne Boleyn. She's also very attractive, okay, in comparison to Catherine, who was in her 40s at that point. Also, we've got the religious aspect. So it believes that he is being punished for marrying his brother's wife, okay? So just looking at this and looking now at the red versus the black, okay, using my knowledge organiser, we have got some specific evidence, okay, we've got some key terms. Catholic, Protestant, okay, using the Tudors. We've got some key dates, so 1509, 1532 to 1534. And if you manage to add all of this red specific detail and remember that, chances are your assessment grades will be higher because you're kind of hitting the different elements or aspects of your key paragraphs, and also very beneficial for your knowledge questions as well for that specific evidence. So that's one method of revision you can use, okay? Obviously, doesn't matter if you're year 7, year 8, year 9, it doesn't matter what topic the assessment's on, because you get one of these for each of your different topics that you learn about, okay? But brain dump is very effective for you to write down firstly what you do know, okay, just from your own memory, and then actively use your knowledge organiser to add that specific evidence and detail.
All right, so the key point there from looking at that is if you look at it really clearly, you can see the black is what I wrote down at the start that I remembered without having to look at any revision, and yet the red is what Miss Sinclair has added, having looked at the knowledge organiser and then going into that extra level of detail to really show her what she does need to know, but also very clearly helps her see what she hasn't remembered before going back to that knowledge organiser. So if you did this, you might want to then try and do it a day or a couple of days later and do the same thing And then the next time you do it, you might hopefully be able to remember more of this stuff with the black pen without needing to go through the knowledge organiser. So the idea of this is it shows you what you have retained and also what you've not remembered, but all of the stuff you will need for whatever assessment you're doing. And the more you do these and the more frequently you repeat them, the less red there should be and the more black there should be, because you're retaining that knowledge by repeating it more and more. Okay, so hopefully that's been quite helpful. It's been a lot of fun to film. We've really enjoyed doing this for you. And like Miss Sinclair said, doesn't matter what year you're in, this method is useful all the way up until GCSE. All right.